Elizabeth Molina, welcome to Being. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is really exciting. The interview was booked fairly quickly, so this is kind of a spontaneous, raw interview, which is exactly how I like it. So thank you for being courageous enough to show up authentically.
Always. And thank you for making the space for me. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. So, one of the things I love about this podcast is really diving into people's journeys, into their struggles, into their challenges. And on your website, it says Elizabeth's personal story of survival has led her to become a catalyst to help people redefine the why surrounding beauty practices. So, I would love, if you're open to it, for you to share some of your backstory, some of your journey, some of the challenges, some of the obstacles that you have overcome to help you arrive as the person you are today.
Totally. So when I talk about my journey, I did a TEDx, and I'm not sure if you saw that.
I haven't had a chance, no, but I definitely will.
Oh man, I really got you, didn't I?
Yes. Well, we booked this within like 24 hours, so here we are.
Yeah, yeah. So I did a TEDx, and my journey was I was married. I was engaged at 16
Oh,
to someone
wow.
18 years my senior. I was married at 18, had a baby at 18, divorced by 21, but back, rewind a little bit. By the age of 19 and a half, 20, I was actually kidnapped by my ex-husband, at the time current husband,
Wow.
to another country for 6 months, where and I'm sorry for the audience, so beware of what I'm going to say next. If you are triggered, please just be aware of that.
Mm.
He kidnapped me and he beat me and raped me daily until he was trying to brainwash me. And then I was able to, in the midst of that, find the strength to overcome that situation, get myself back to the US and escape with a baby and $25. And here I am today, just thriving.
Wow. I had no idea, and I did not expect that whatsoever. I want to just honor you for being so forthcoming and being open to speaking about it. That is obviously a massively traumatic experience. So that the fact that you've come out the other side and you are who you are and so successful in what you're doing, that is incredible. So I really honor you for your bravery and courage. Um,
Thank you.
where to go from that? That's that is a significant obstacle for you to overcome. So you arrived back in the US with a baby, barely any money in your pocket. What happened next?
Um, there's like a magic that happens when you hit like rock bottom, right? Like there's
Mm,
nowhere else to go.
mm,
And there's like two choices, right? Like there's a fire that can ignite, and it's like I have to, like, there's a reason why I'm here. Or you could
mm,
just sit there and wallow into, like, the poor me, oh, like just feeling bad for yourself.
yeah.
So I obviously had a baby, and I'm like, I have to like show her. Like I need to like step up my game. And so 2 days after that, I literally walked with her, like no carriage, like just carrying her. Um, and by the way, I came back like 3% body fat. So the baby looked bigger than me. Like I
Wow.
looked like I was her nanny. Like from a third world country, like I was like 100 pounds.
Wow.
And so I marched with her to college. Um, Before that, I had gotten into Columbia University, NYU, and I went into these colleges, and I'm like, okay, I know that I registered, but how do I get re-register? Like, what's the deal? Like, I just showed
Mm,
up there like out of a movie. Like, I didn't care if I had an appointment. I didn't know. Like, I'm like, dude, I just came from this situation. Like,
wow.
I'm here. Like, a
Yeah.
movie like just showed up with this baby in my arm, and I'm like, what do I do? And I think people were just like in shock, like,
Right.
what is happening here? And they're like, oh, yeah, you need to, like, they were just directing me to places. So, anyways, I went there. They were like, listen, if you want to start school, like, fall semester started, it's spring, you're not gonna get financial aid, et cetera, et cetera. It's very expensive. And like, what are your finances? I'm like, I don't have any. What do you want
Mm,
me to do? So they basically said to me, well, there's a sister school that most of our professors, and I wanted to, be a doctor. So I wanted to be in the sciences.
Mm,
And most of the professors taught at a CUNY school, which was near Columbia, which is a city college.
mm.
So they're like, if you go there, it'll be cheaper and it'll be easier for you. And I'm like, okay, sure. I literally walked over, like, you know, I did the same thing coming with my baby. I'm like, listen, how do I register? What's the deal? They redirected me. I got registered the same day. I'm like, what do I do with my kid? Like, what are the rules? Can I bring her to class? Like, I don't have childcare. And they're like, no.
Wow. Wow. This does
And then
sound
I
like a
think,
Hollywood movie. This is incredible.
yeah, and now that I think about it, like I never told these moments of the story.
Right.
And I think people were like in shock or confused. Like I felt like it was like so surreal because like no one does that really.
Mm,
And my attitude was like I was fierce. I was
mm.
like, here I am. Like there's no space for you to say no to me. And there was like that fire. Like 2 days out after like this ordeal, right? And I'm like, okay, what do I do with my baby? And they're like, well, we have childcare, but like honestly, all the professors usually take that up, and it should be for the students, but like, the politics. And I'm like, what
Yeah.
politics? I don't care. I'm gonna go show up there.
I don't care about politics.
I don't care. I have to do something for my baby. So I went and they're like, listen, we can't like, teachers usually take up all the space. But go here. Like people were just like sending me away. And I'm like, what else do I have to lose? Okay, I'll
Mm,
go to other places. And I ended up going to places. I got childcare. Um, the very next day after I situated my childcare, by the way, for free, because they're
mm.
like, we have scholarships for women like you. I'm like, I don't know what women like me is, but I'll take it.
Yeah, right.
And then I go the next day to school, and I read, I had to pay like bursars or whatever. And
Mm,
I'm leaving the building, and I went to a military boarding school. So I
mm,
had really great posture. Plus I was like super thin, and I still had really great manners. So as I'm leaving the building, again, you're like 20-year-old, like 21, you're not thinking about like, no, half the people are not experiencing what I did, right? What
yeah.
I went through. So I opened the door for this gentleman, like older gentleman, and I'm like, oh, go ahead, sir. And he's like standing there. He's like, oh, how do you like the school? And I was like, wow, this after what I've been through, this guy's being nice to me. And I'm like, I actually like it. Like I haven't spoken to people. No one's asked me like, how are you feeling? What's going on? I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
it's a nice school. Yeah, people are friendly. They're directing me in the right place. Like I was being honest. He's like, oh, well, so tell me about your experience. I'm like, no, everybody was helpful. Like I paid for what I had to. I got my classes. I got information. He's like, do you have a job? I'm like, I've never worked a day in my life. And he's like, so what is your plan? I'm like, I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. And he's like, well, so what's your deal? Like you have such great posture. And I'm like, oh, well, I went to a military boarding school. He's like, well, so did I. And I'm like thinking to myself, I really need to get home. Like I have to figure I could get my baby back. Like they said they
Yeah.
would watch her for amount of hours. Like I like talking to this guy, but like, okay. And he's like, how would you like to work for this school? I'm like, what does that mean? He's like, in between hours of classes, like, how did you do your schedule? I'm like, yeah, that would sound nice, but what kind of job is that? Like, I've never heard of a
Mm,
job that would work around a student's schedule.
right.
And I have a baby, and he like turns around, and there's a picture of him on the wall, and he's the president of the college.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, the universe was supporting me like
Perfectly.
hardcore. So
Yeah.
that's some of my story. Like, I mean, we can talk about this for hours, right?
Yeah.
But that's some of my story until in terms of like my resiliency, where I
Yeah.
get it, like everywhere I turned, there was support.
Absolutely. So that resiliency, that fierce attitude you talked about, was that something intrinsic in you, or like did you learn that in childhood? Like what was your childhood like? Or was it like the trauma you went through and the fact that you had a child that that nurture sort of survival mechanism was fired in you?
You know, I would love to say I was just born this way.
Well, we are to a certain extent, right? We have that
Yeah,
survival fire, but it's
yeah. So
louder
I
in
think
some
it's a
people.
combination. It's a
Right.
combination of, I firmly believe that like, and the universe and like the way you were born and you chose to come into this world,
Right.
sets you up. Like, you only know you connect the dots looking backwards, right? So when I look
Right.
at it, I'm like, "Oh, that's what was like, I was being
Right.
prepared for this."
Right. Oh,
So
that's a
I
beautiful perspective. I love that.
Yeah, and so, like, I've had teachers along the way, things that have happened, but I've always been a very introspective person, even as a
Mm.
child. Like, if someone, like, at playtime or recess, like, didn't wanna play with me, I, like, always sat in it. Like,
Mm.
just intuitively. I was
Mm.
like, "Huh, what did I do wrong or what happened?" Like, I try to, like, always analyze it, and then I try to improve.
Mm.
And also my parents, like, my mom and dad, I mean, obviously, they weren't perfect, right?
Mm.
Not everybody is, and
No.
people are not how you want them to be, but they were the catalyst and the teachers, right? Like, maybe their neglect sometimes taught me to be more independent.
Right.
Like,
Wow.
the things that they maybe didn't do for me gave me the tools to do the things that I needed to do, and then they
Of
gave me the
course.
rest. So, like, my parents, like, my mom was always preaching about, there's no such thing as, like, if the door closes, like, find another. She's like, "You don't have to find one, just make it.
Right.
Like, just make it. Break
I
the
love
wall
that.
down."
Yes, I love that.
So
So
she was like that,
so
and my dad also.
did you feel support from your parents? Like, I'm curious, like, when you got to
No,
16 and
no.
this man entered your life, there must have been some deficiency or need for validation that you clung on to.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, my parents were getting divorced, and they were
Mm.
in their own mess. And I
Mm.
feel like there was a part of them what was like, teenage daughter, just whatever. This man is there. He's very wealthy. He's taking care of her. Like,
Right.
we have our own shit to deal with.
Right.
Um, so I wasn't supported at all. And this man came in, obviously, Prince Charming and all, and,
Yeah.
when you hear the TED, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but
Right.
yeah, so there was no support there, and even after when I came back, they still didn't support me actually because they wanted me to go back to him, and he had told them, "If you support her, you're supporting, like, a divorce, and this child is gonna grow up with no parents," so they were like, "No, divorce, oh my gosh, we were divorced, and now
Mm.
it's like the plague." So there was no support. And, even till today, I still have a very strained relationship with my family because of
Wow.
my decisions, of my way of thinking.
And even though they were aware of what happened to you and your trauma?
Yes. So my mother, when I told her, she actually said, "Well, it must be because maybe you're not like experienced sexually." She gave me a sex book.
Wow. Wow.
And I was like very feisty. I was like, "Mom, this is a man who's been around the world." Believe me, that's not my problem. Like, that's
Right.
not what it is. Like, I was just like that was my defense mechanism, and my
Yeah.
dad was just like, "Well, it must be your mother's fault because we got divorced. You don't know how to be a proper housewife."
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's that's a interesting perspective. Yeah.
Yeah,
I love what you said about entering this world as sort of, your soul decides to come into this world and chooses the family in order for it to grow
yes.
um, most efficiently. I love that perspective. And it moves, like you said earlier, moves you away from that victim consciousness of, oh, why me? My life is so bad. Look at all these obstacles, rather than you move to like a creator consciousness where it's like, okay, these challenges are happening for me in order for me to improve and evolve. Do you subscribe to that mindset, or were you born with it? How did you come to realize that?
100% I subscribe to that, and that's not to say that I don't have moments where I'm like, "Why me?"
Of
Right?
course, we all do. Yes, of course.
And I'm like, "Why did I?" Then I moved to like, "Why did I choose this? Like, why
Yeah,
did I tell the universe I wanted a star role? Like,
right.
why?" Right? So I subscribe to that, and I go back to my childhood. I've had
Mhm.
wonderful teachers of life, and I was just able to absorb it. And because of my personality, I always sit like I listen very intentionally. Sometimes it seems like I'm not listening, but
Mm,
I'm just taking it in on so many different levels
mm,
and processing it. And so I think that innately I knew that, right? Because we all know we know everything. Like we come knowing, we
mm,
just have to remember.
right.
And so I think like if you're listening, you remember. And I've had teachers who have reminded me of that, like in school, like, when they talk to you, like something happened wrong, and you're like, well, why did this happen? And then they start to, well, they teach you lessons. So I think that there's a combination of that, but I definitely subscribe to that
Mm.
for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. Your bio also says, I help people discover their true self and help them return to their natural state. Then self love, world peace, and anything at all becomes possible. And that just gave me chills when I read that. It's so beautiful. Can I ask you what you mean when you refer to true self and natural state?
Yeah, so, thank you for asking me that because,
Mm,
usually when I get interviewed, it's always like very superficial about
okay.
beauty and makeup and skin and
Isn't that
hair, which I
interesting?
love.
Yeah, I know, and we're gonna get to that, but it's yeah, but like you say, that industry is typically so superficial. So I love to get beneath the surface and find out what's really going on with people.
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it. So thank you. So for me, getting to your original state is, that child, it's like the child state of you, like your spirit, the
Yes.
free spirit that doesn't um really subscribe to what society has told it how to conform to. And what that means to me is like when you're a child, right? And you want to play with whether it's lipstick, a truck, like there's no like gender assigned to you. I mean, obviously we were born into gender, right? But
Yeah.
like no one's telling you, well, you know what, you can't wear pink because you're a boy, or you can't like this because you're a girl and you need to be more feminine. And so like this is when society starts telling you like how to be, what you
Mm,
have to be, and your spirit starts like shrinking in a way, like
mm,
starts like constricting and molding into this shape that you were forced to by society. So like even as a
totally.
boy, when boys are told, and I'm sure maybe you've heard it, I'm not sure, but like if you cry about like if you got fell and hit your knee, it's like you're a strong boy, you shouldn't cry. And it's
Yeah.
like what do you mean? Why are you cutting off this boy's ability to relate and be empathic, to be compassionate? Because you're telling
Mm,
him, no, your feelings don't matter. So I want to get down to that boy. Let's say we're talking about a boy or a guy
mm,
in particular, that person who was in touch with his feminine side, who was
mm.
empathic, who was compassionate, who was able to commune with nature. And so that's what I mean by getting down to that person who you don't really have these like you're not judging things, you're
Mm.
feeling things. And there's a big difference of being in a space of judgment. Obviously we as humans and animals, we need to judge because that's for our safety reasons, right? Like we need
Yeah,
to
of
see if there's a
course.
tiger coming to us, but there's the beautifulness of just being in space and just living and accepting, and that's like the essence of your getting back to you.
Yes. Oh my God, that was amazing, and I totally relate to that. The way look at it is we are born these perfect, innocent light beings, and then,
Yes.
like you say, we're conditioned by society, by our parents, by rules, regulations, and it takes us further and further away from our truest self. And it becomes this disconnection. And I work a lot with alcoholics and addicts, and that's the disconnection that causes the disharmony that is so painful that we would rather just numb out with alcohol or drugs than deal with that pain in the moment. But it's
Mhm.
so like your story mirrors mine in that I was so motivated because I had an issue with alcohol dependency that I overcame. And then when I came back to a more healed, grounded, centered wholeness, I'm like, oh my God, you can have this peace and joy and connectedness within yourself all the time. Where even when you go out in the world and there are the challenges, there is anxiety or obstacles, whatever happens, you can deal with them because you have that grounded wholeness. It doesn't get to the point where you're so disconnected. But the problem is society has molded us, and it's reinforced by the beauty industry, by advertising, by Hollywood, by governments,
Yeah.
by propaganda, that we are not whole and we're less than perfect, and we need things outside of us to feel whole, and it's a total lie. So I honor you for your work and what you're doing. So maybe this is a good segue into you as the beauty guru. How did that come about?
Yeah, so, I use, and I'm gonna be honest with you because I
Please.
recently someone said, I was like talking and they're like, "You're very sneaky." I'm like, sneaky was like not and is not like a positive word usually, right?
Right.
And so I'm like, but this time I kind of like that. So I use beauty. I was like, what is my purpose, right? Like, why am I here? Why am I in this container? Why do I
Mm,
look this way? Because I have half the time, like if there's no mirror, I don't even think that this is what I look like, right?
right.
And a lot of my trauma in life has been because of what I look like, right? Like
Right.
I'm not gonna go
Oh,
into it, but
wow.
like Even at 5, I was, like, molested,
Oh,
and,
wow.
like, there's a lot of trauma based on my appearance and
Mm.
my looks.
Is there a certain level of resentment that comes with that?
There was, for a
Right.
very long time.
I
I was
bet.
very angry at my body, like, "Why do I have this?" Like,
Yeah.
before it was a po before Kim Kardashian, right? Like, before all
Right.
the fillers and plastic surgery, like, this was me,
Right.
naturally, and so I was like, "Why? Like, what is this?" Like, I hated it, really, like, truly hated it. So, going back to that, I use beauty as this superficial tool to bypass a lot of the bullshit and sneak into your soul through the
Mm.
back door because it's such a sneaky way where we can talk about it's easy for someone to talk about their gray hair, their teeth aren't white, they want longer lashes, they want beautiful nails, the wrinkles. Like that is a very easy conversation to have with anyone on any level. Now it's up to you and your soul. It's like I'm kind of nudging it inside, like, hey, I'm
Right.
here. Let's have this conversation. Like, let's talk about it. Like, what's your why? So
Right.
that is the work that I do. Like I figured out, okay, maybe I'm here to like talk to the people who are on this frequency and bring them, kind of surf them up to different parts of themselves that they're yearning for because they're gravitating to the material, to the superficial. And I'm here to gather them all and be like, let's go over here because this is really what's going on.
Yes, I love that. So you use beauty as the entry point into sort of personal development and transformation.
100%
Oh, I
yes.
love that. It's because I do the same thing with alcohol. Like I subscribe to people that are struggling with alcohol, but really what's happening is this personal transformation under the surface, right?
Yes.
And so how do people react? Like when you have clients that come to you, say for gray hair or they want longer lashes or whatever, and you say, "Well, what is your why?" How do they react to that?
Well, usually people who are and I don't, I hope nobody gets offended, but when you're on this wavelength of superficial, right? When
Mm,
and that's not just like beauty, like physical beauty, like that could be clothes, that
mm,
could be, men going through a crisis and buying that red convertible. I talk about it
yeah.
all the time. It could be like you wanna buy fancy clothes, right? Like, there's so many different levels. You need bags, you need your home needs to be, like,
Yeah.
with the most beautiful contemporary furniture, whatever your style is. So, usually, these kind of people, don't really know that they are searching for that,
Mm,
and no one they don't even have the time because they make themselves so busy trying to get the material to ask themselves this question. So
mm.
I have to say that, first of all, nobody has ever asked them these questions because
Oh,
I know I asked them and they're like, no one ever cared to ask me because usually when you're in that superficial world, all you care about is the newest thing, the newest
right.
lipstick, the newest car, the newest bag, the newest shoe. Did you get that fall, season 2022? Like that is not a conversation that people have.
Mm,
So usually it's accepted. They're like the kind of when your heart sinks a little bit,
yeah.
like when I ask the question, like, why does it matter about your gray hair? And they're like, and they just pause for a second and I can feel them like the it's cracking. And
Yeah.
then they like usually you have the answer for yourself. It's just you need the person to facilitate the questions that you need. And it's all in the questions. And I am a curious ass person.
I love it. I love that. Awesome. Beautiful. So yeah. So I'm just curious. Like, do people respond to it? Like, I find people that have lived their whole lives superficially or seeking externally for validation. They're either unconscious of something or they're protective of something, and they don't want to go inwards because it's too scary or painful, or they're not even aware of it. So when you invite them in and to ask those deeper internal questions, would imagine a lot of people are just like, hell no, get me out of here. Like I don't want to do that. So is there like a ratio of people that and just like, okay, I'll do it?
So I guess, I haven't experienced that really. And I feel
Mm,
like because of my story and because of my energy and my presence, I
yeah,
really make it safe
right.
for
And
them. But I
and that
think
is
that's
so powerful.
yeah. And so like my energy, my presence, my story, what I share makes it so safe for them that they by themselves voluntarily just want to like, they're like, I need you to hear me. I'm like, okay. So
Yes.
so I just like literally like crack a little opening and they usually like just burst out because they've been waiting to feel safe. And I think
Wow.
people forget about that safety. Like if you don't feel safe, you are not going to come out. And that's why the people in this industry are keep on going there, because those are walls that you keep on
Mm.
building, reinforcing. You're like, I need the barbed wire, I need the concrete, I need the electrical fence,
Mm.
like all those things, beauty, hair, shoes, all that, that's the fence. And you keep on building on your fence because you're not feeling safe, you're not feeling heard. And I provide that.
Wow.
I am that, like, take a breath with me and we're gonna take it all down, because I
Yes.
show up raw. I am raw.
Yes.
This
I
is
can tell.
me.
I
Like
love it.
these
I
are
love it.
these are parts of me. Like I am coming to you naked, and
Yeah.
you should not be afraid. Like these are my scars. These are my wounds. I'm sure yours are smaller. Like my scars are so big for the most part that people are like, dude, I have this little scrape. Like, let me
Yeah.
show it to you because you're freaking like you're like Frankenstein almost.
Wow, that's so amazing, Elizabeth, how you set that container for people to feel safe and to express themselves. That is so, so powerful and so needed in this world. Because when, like you say, when they do feel safe and they open up, that's where the real magic happens. That's where they feel like they're heard and they can be vulnerable and they can be seen in many ways that maybe they never have been before. And that, oh my God, that is so powerful and again so needed in this world. So thank you for doing that work and having the courage to do that work and to overcome what you've overcome to come to this place. It's just magnificent. What a story. Incredible. So I understand you moved into the modeling world. So how did that transition happen and what's your experience been in the modeling world? Because again, that's another industry that's very superficial, very what's the word, a lot of vices.
Superficial.
It's super. Yeah, it's, I guess that's the word. What's your
Yeah.
experience been in the modeling world?
Oh God. So fun fact, I actually went on my first casting call at the age of 5.
Oh wow.
Yeah, which is funny because I've done a lot of shows and interviews and a lot of retrospect, and a lot of things happened for me at the age of 5.
Okay, interesting.
So very interesting, and I'm still figuring out all the connections of it because it's just remarkable. But so I have been exposed to the beauty industry at a very young age,
Mm,
not just like on the outside, but even from home, mother, grandmother. Like beauty was very important in our culture.
right,
That's the worth of a woman,
for
her beauty.
sure. Can I
And
can I ask you just what your heritage is? What's your background?
yes, I'm Peruvian, Dominican, Israeli.
Whoa, awesome. That's incredible and very diverse. Yeah, it's I'm just curious because of the culture of those different places can impact you so deeply. So it's interesting to hear that
Yes.
the women in your family felt that beauty was a strong attribute that you needed to have.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna go into it because honestly, we can have like a whole season just talking. But that would have to do with like trauma and like not having support and like
Yeah.
that you
It's
have to offer.
generational. It's
Exactly. There
yeah.
you go.
Yeah, and that's another thing we talk about on this podcast a lot is how do we break from those generational ancestral lines and when they're so deeply ingrained in us, right? And so again, this is another powerful thing we can do as individuals is first recognize what our generational patterns are, things that are not serving us and negatively perpetuating and have the courage to say no, I'm going to stop this. It's
Right.
incredible, incredible.
Right.
So,
So to get, I'm not going to go into that, but to get to your
yeah.
question about how I deal with the superficial or modeling, or
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I was equipped to
Right.
be in both lanes. Like I was always known as extremely spiritual. Like anyone who's ever known me was like, dude, why, how are you not like the number one wellness expert? Like what is you were eating quinoa like at birth and juicing and like what is this like craziness?
Yeah.
Um and so I always live those two like lives together. Like I always say, like you wear a mask and you
Right.
put on this suit and you change. One day you're a student, one day you're a teacher, one day you're a model, one day you're a mom.
Yeah.
And so I've always lived with those things and I knew how to balance like the superficial and understanding like their why. Like I always said I'm very curious, right? So
Mm.
in the modeling space, the expectations are not only superficial but unrealistic, and that goes into the beauty industry, which is $1 trillion industry, and it is funded by our insecurities and desires to be perfect,
Totally.
and to be something that is completely unrealistic, unachievable, and first of all, airbrushed in
Yes.
Photoshop. So when you know that, and so like I've spoken about this before, like there's something to say about when people are judging you and like you're not tall enough, you're not skinny enough, your cheekbones are too high, they're not high enough, they're not big enough.
Mm,
You learn to figure out, okay, well, that's not me. I know who I am. So it can either break you, when we see it, a lot of people just go down here, or
totally.
it can make you really strong and say, that's not to me, because they're looking for a specific look. They're looking for that red car. They're looking for, and I'm blue car, right? They're looking for a convertible and I'm a pickup truck. They're looking, they're looking for a two-seater and I'm a freaking SUV.
Yeah.
So it's not me. So like, I mean, there's that, but I know my hope is, and what I want to achieve in the industry is to start breaking those barriers and start um having people like, I don't want to say protest, but like disrupt the industry of, stop telling us that we don't have silky hair, so you're going to sell us this silky shampoo, which is
Right.
90% water, by the way. Right? Like, stop selling us water with a little bit of ingredient. Like, we look good, we feel good, our hair is fine, our skin is fine. Like,
Mm,
stop having a person who's 25 sell wrinkle commercial for a 50-year-old. Like, that is not realistic. So
mm.
I want people to take back their power. And
Yes.
that's what I want to do in the modeling space today. Because before I was part of that, like I was going to be doing commercials for like wrinkle cream at 26. And I'm like, I don't even have wrinkles. That's like, like that is weird. Like, shouldn't
Yeah.
you be casting a woman who's like in her late 40s, early 50s? Like, how is that? And then women who are in their 40s and 50s who are actually buying this, they're like, I need to buy more because
Mm,
I'm not like that girl. And and so there's this mind altering thing that happens. And I just want people to kind of step out of that like 3D space and come into like their character, their person. Like we spoke about their
yes.
soul, their spirit. I went on a tangent there because I get so passionate, but
I
it,
love it. Yeah, feel free. And this all comes back to what we were just talking about, is that grounded, centered wholeness. Like I think we're talking about the same thing. We just come at it from different perspectives, and that's
yeah,
beautiful, because what we are up against is this massive, powerful machine of propaganda and advertising and manipulation, preying on, like you said, on our insecurity and our self doubt and our inadequacy, just to sell us something that we don't need. And so
yep,
the more we can become aware of it and step back into our power, and then we can actually change the world by, deciding, making different choices, in everything we do. Okay, well, I don't need that car or that extra house or, this beauty product. I'm beautiful just the way I am. I'm whole just the way I am. And if you can
right.
move into the world from that place of wholeness and healed, that's super powerful and exactly what the world needs. So again, I applaud you for the work you're doing. It's incredible.
Thank you.
And
And
you're
that's
very,
what I talk about, I'm sorry
yeah,
to cut you off, when
that's
I talk
fine.
about world peace and when I bring you back into that state of
Yeah,
love. And
yeah.
it sounds so cheesy because I'm like in my TED, I'm like, and world peace, And it's like so funny. Like I did it with like a double intention. Like I thought it was funny. I have a weird sense of humor.
Right.
And then like I actually meant it.
Yeah.
Because when you get into that state of love, when you love yourself, you love others, right? If
Yes.
you're happy, why would you want somebody to be sad
Yeah.
or miserable, right?
Yeah. Totally.
That's where the world peace comes in.
Yeah, and it's not pie in the sky. I honestly believe that we've been convinced that we're powerless as individuals. Like that's how they rope us into all these
Yeah.
manipulations. Like, you are powerless by yourself. But the more of us that can take our power back and stand in the power, and then form collectives, form tribes, form community around it, that's how we take, because there's more of us than there is of them, right?
Yes.
So world peace, or any of these sort of major disruptions and transformations in the world, are possible, but it takes each of us as individuals doing the work, right?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, again, so powerful, the work you're doing. One of the questions I love to ask my guests is about success. What is your definition of success, and how has it changed over time?
Wow. That's a hell of a question. Today, I guess, I don't know, should I talk about, well, success to me used to be like money and
Yeah,
power,
right. The traditional forms of
traditional
materialism.
form. And today's success means to me, and this sounds so cheesy, but it means like a life that I impacted. And I can watch like the seeds that I've been sowing.
Mm,
I watch them flourish and then I watch them like pollinate other seeds and plants, and
mm,
and that to me is success, because in my mind I'm like, there's a field of all these different kinds of flowers that I've been like putting into the ground and feeding them, and then they grow and they're just like wildly like pollinating, and I'm like, oh, that is success, that is beautiful, that is spirit, that is communion. And so for me, that's success.
yes. Oh my God. I love that metaphor of planting seeds and watching them flourish and then ripple outwards, right?
Yeah.
Beyond even this lifetime. And that comes back to the ancestral thing we were talking about. What seeds are we planting? Is it the same old seeds that our ancestors have planted? You know, some of them are great, but some of them maybe not. And so it's time to
Right.
plant new seeds and then let that ripple out. And then, you know, your impact in this lifetime, yeah, becomes exponential for future generations, and your daughter as a perfect example.
And it's
So
eternal, by the way. Like that's how you live forever,
that's
by
right.
impacting people, because you impact their family, you impact their
Yes.
genetics. And that's what I want. And
Oh,
that's success to me.
yes. Oh my God. That's probably one of the most beautiful definitions of success I've heard, because I ask almost every guest. So thank you for that. I'd love to hear more about like your daily routines. Like, what do you do? How do you practice staying grounded, healthy, creative?
That
What
is,
are some of the things that you do?
I'm extreme.
You're extreme in your routines? Are
In
you
my routine, yeah, like I'm a crazy, I don't want to say crazy, but I'm a little bit obsessive over things. Like I love meditating, uh,
Great.
different kinds of meditations.
How did you learn to meditate? And how long have you been doing it?
Oh, I want to say consistently, probably like 4 years, and
Okay.
off and on, maybe 10 years. And
Right.
I guess like when I went to therapy for like PTSD and
Of
like my
course.
trauma,
Yeah.
and that's where I think I really started to, I feel like I knew how to meditate, but I didn't know that I was meditating.
Right.
Um,
Just being
and then
mindful and present.
yeah, and then, in therapy, I learned some tricks and I was like, this is not working. This monkey brain of mine is like,
Right.
no. And then you start kind of surrendering. And then I think for me, because I'm such a fighter, I
Right.
struggle with the surrender, which is the key to meditation, I think.
Yes,
Just
it
let it
is.
go, let it flow. So yeah, so that's how I learned to meditate, and just like putting up a fight for like 10 years, basically. And okay,
I had the same experience. It took me a long time to really surrender into meditation. Now I love it and I can't live without it. But yeah, the
right,
monkey brain, it's like, because we're hanging on so tight. It's that survival mechanism, right? It's that fight or flight. It's like, if I lose control, I might die, you know? But
right,
it's, and as
yes.
soon as you surrender, it's like, oh my God, there's so much peace and joy and safety here, right?
Yes, but I will say that there is a little bit of like an, I don't wanna say addiction to that, like
Right. You can
that
be
little
addicted to
like
the bliss. Is
yes,
that what you
like
mean?
yes,
Yeah.
but like no, but there's like a little line between surrendering and then the bliss. There's like like a first, like I can't explain it, but that like battle
Yeah.
is really addicting, by the way.
Yeah.
When you just feel like complete all of a sudden, like you're so tense and then you're like relaxed, you're
Yeah.
like, wow, like that is
It
so amazing.
is. It
So
is
that's a
so
good
amazing.
habit.
It is a good habit. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you can, the way I talk about it with my clients is when you meditate, you're practicing. That's why they call it practice, because you're learning, relearning how to come back to that place of grounded wholeness. And so when you do go out in the world, it's not that there isn't challenges or stress or anger and or anxiety. It's how you respond to them and how quickly you can come back to that grounded homeostasis, right? That's why
Yes.
you practice meditation. Just,
100%. And so another thing that I do meditation, I do sauna therapy, which I love.
ooh, what's that?
I get in a sauna with
Oh,
infrared
sauna. I thought you meant
sauna.
Sonic. Yeah. Okay,
Sonic,
great.
I wish, whatever that is.
Right.
Sauna therapy. I am a big proponent of grounding, obviously going out in nature, but food.
Right.
Um, Eating root vegetables is
Mm.
super grounding, because
Oh,
if you live in a building, right, and like you're living in the air, it's really hard to ground all the time,
yeah.
and to keep you there. Like even if you're not thinking about it, you're like, why am I always like when I'm in my apartment, I feel this way? Yeah, because you're like 22 feet up in the air.
Yeah.
um, So, like, root vegetables is something that I love to do all the time, like, eat them because it
Mm,
keeps you very centered, very grounded, like, even if you can't do the meditation or do the other things, but, like, if you eat the grounding, and I know that sounds
right.
crazy,
No, it
but
doesn't.
it just I mean, those are some of the things that I do, to keep grounded.
Yeah. So you mentioned food. I think that's an important topic, especially as a model or a beauty person. How do you relate to food? What's your relationship been over time, and how do your clients relate to food? Maybe more importantly.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've struggled with food as a model, right?
Yeah,
Like,
of
where I
course.
didn't eat, and then when I was kidnapped and I wasn't given food, that
Wow.
really messed me up because I had this mentality of like, "F that," like, that's actually why I quit modeling after I got re-signed after I came back so emaciated, right? Because I was like, "Oh my god, you're so perfect now." Like 3% body fat. I didn't even have like a period for like 8 months because I was so
Wow.
thin, like,
Eh,
that's how emaciated I was. And so after that, I feel like my relationship with food has changed drastically because there's a part of me that's like, why would you deprive yourself of food
Yeah.
when you've been denied food? Like, not by yourself, but by someone else.
Yeah.
So there's a thing there for me. And so I constantly work on have to like literally, like, I call it conscious eating, where I'm telling
Mm,
myself, why are you putting this in your mouth? Why are you not putting this? Like, is it fueling my body? Is it fueling my cells? Why do I need this?
mm,
And so, like, I just try to always ask myself that because I think it's really important. Even when I have, like, sometimes I have emotional eating and I'm like, I just want to stuff my face with things. And I'm
we
like,
all do.
that's
Yeah.
not okay. Like, what's going on? And it could be like, it's maybe before like my period. And I'm like, oh, I know why I reached for the chocolate. I maybe need more magnesium to support my body. Right. So just
Mm,
being aware of that. And for my clients, it's literally, unfortunately, almost the exact same thing,
mm,
for them, except for, like, the kidnapping part and someone not giving them food. But, they restrict food from themselves because, unfortunately, society has taught us that if you are of a specific weight category, that means that you are more of an elite person, that you are more you're the person to seek advice from.
right.
Which is really wrong because it's not healthy to deprive yourself of food. So I encourage people and I tell my clients and myself, like, eat your minerals, eat for your body. Like,
Mm,
you are the owner of this vehicle. What do you want to do with your body? Do you want to crash and then what? Or
yeah.
do you want to like live a sustainable, beautiful, healthy life? So my whole thing with food is just ask yourself why. Why am I eating this pizza? And like once you know you can eat it, like you can have your cake, you can have all the things you want, but just know why. Why
Mm,
am I doing this? And once you know that, it just changes the way you receive it in your body. And
mm,
I think that's the key because if you have if you have this like gluten-free, fat-free cauliflower pizza with, fake cheese and you're like, "I'm healthy," but you're angry about it, that's not
yes.
serving your body, right?
Oh,
Like, you're not in homeostasis. You are in fight or flight, your body can't digest it, then you're gonna start having celiac and Crohn's, and things are fermenting in there because your body is a live organism, so it's just rotting in there because it can't, like, metabolize correctly. So my whole thing is for eating is just know your why and be happy about it. Like, be happy with the foods that you put in your body. And if you're not going to be happy about it, just try not to do it. Go out for a walk, have water. Half the time we're dehydrated. So that's my
mm.
take on food. And I'm dropping the mic there.
Drop the mic. Wow, that was incredible, and I totally agree. That was so powerful. What we're talking about is just conscious intention with and cultivating self-awareness around everything we're doing. And food is such an intrinsic part of our lives. We need it to survive, but our relationship with it is so skewed when we're not in our conscious awareness. When we are unconscious and just eating from emotional pleasure, or just because we're hurt or we want to be distracted. And like you said, the nutrients that go into your body wholly depend on your state of mind when you're eating them. And that is something people don't realize. Like you said, if you're angry and you're eating healthy food, it's not going to digest and metabolize as well as if you're grounded and calm and aware and grateful. And so it's like you said, it doesn't mean you can't have French fries or the cake or something, but don't feel guilty about it. Do it
Right.
with conscious intentionality. And that's how I do it. I love French fries and I still eat them from time to time, but I do it.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, it's not a guilty pleasure. It's no, I'm consciously choosing this in this moment. Right. And in
Yeah.
that way, it serves me on the deepest level. Right. So
And I wanna add something to that, like, if anyone
Sure.
has a dog, I don't know, do you have pets?
I have a cat.
You have a cat, okay.
Yeah.
I have 2 dogs, but if anyone has a pet, you'll notice that if your pet like, for me, I have dogs, like, if they are in a grumpy mood or they're, like, have anxiety, they will not eat.
Mm,
Like, animals know not to eat when they're sick, when
interesting.
they're not feeling well, because they can feel that their body cannot digest the food and their
Right.
body needs to heal. So, like, sometimes you can learn from your animals and watch them. And so, like, I just wanted to add there that because it's very interesting that we have lost that.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot to be learned from animals. We are animals. We're just,
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what kind of skills do you think we should be focusing on as developing human beings that will serve us in the future? Like the world is changing so fast right now, and I think we've covered a lot of them, like your relationship with food, meditation, conscious awareness. What are some other skills that you think will be useful and necessary to survive in this environment moving forward?
Um, I I feel like I'm the cheesiest person, the cheesiest guest. I would say I don't know, it's like between communication
Yeah.
and, like, being kind and empathic. Like, I feel like
Mm,
we're so connected on social media and platforms, but we're so disconnected.
mm,
I have a teen daughter, and I can sometimes, like, she's on the phone and she, like, doesn't know how to, like, talk to her friend, and she's like, "Okay, bye," and then they'll snap each other all day or, like, send, like, emojis, and I'm like, "But you didn't communicate, like,
yeah.
what is." So I feel like for the future, I think that we need to hone in on being empathic, compassionate, and kind
Mm,
with each other, but pass it down because kids can't even write a letter to each other these days. They can't even
mm,
call and say, "Hey, Elizabeth, how are you today? Are you feeling okay? Did you need anything? How do I support you?" Like that piece of humanity has slowly been, I want to say it's like endangered almost. Like it's on the
mm.
endangered list. And I wish we brought it back.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. A sense of community and authentic relations, just being present with other people and, the isolation of this pandemic or whatever we're going through has amplified that and made it a lot worse. But I totally agree. A sense of community, and that comes back to what we were saying: is as individuals, as we continue to do the work of becoming more whole, then we can interact with other people, not from a place of woundedness or insecurity, but from a place of wholeness. And when you connect with another person in their wholeness and see them and they see you, that is incredibly powerful because you feel seen. And that's a real
Yeah.
connection. Right. And
Yes.
that's exactly what we need moving forward. So thank you for that reminder. That was absolutely beautiful. Okay, Elizabeth Molina, this has been incredible. So nice to meet you and just
Yes.
like have this real, raw, authentic conversation. I love your energy. I love all the work you're doing. I just have one more question for you, and it's this:
Sure.
if you were to take all of your experiences, all the knowledge and wisdom that you've gained, and distill them down into one message or one sentence, what would it be?
You are enough.
Ah, that's it. That's it. Mic drop.
Is it gonna be a hard question? And it's like, "No, you are enough." And that's what we all wanna be seen and heard, like you said, and we wanna feel like we're enough. And that's what we
Yes.
all fight for. The likes, the shares, the pictures, all of it is just all of our souls crying to be accepted and to feel like we fit in and that we are enough.
Mm,
And that is my message
mm.
as well.
Beautiful. Elizabeth Molina, thank you so much for taking the time with us today. Do you want to let people know where they can find you online?
Sure. I am active on Instagram with my handle is Elizabeth___ Molina. And you can check out my website, elizabethmolinainc.com. And I'm most active on those two platforms.
Amazing. Amazing. I will put all of those links, of course, in the show notes so people can find you. Elizabeth Molina, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on here.
My pleasure. Have a fabulous day.
Thank you.
Bye.